This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon Radio.
Welcome to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon. A little bit about me. I'd lived in 3 different countries by the time I was 21. Went to 8 different schools, one of which was boarding school when I was 10, which is actually in the bush. And I wanted to be a journalist when I was very, very young. Now I have my dream job, which is doing my show and personal styling. And today I'm regretting my sartorial choice. I'm wearing black faux leather. Quite warm here in the studio, but this is why I don't wear black. So just wanted to I thought I'd go a little bit edgy, but I'm not feeling it today. So this is why I normally wear colour. So this is what Nancy looks like in black. But I also am very happy with my new hair. I've got curly hair thanks to Hannah HK Hair. So I'm back to my curls. And on today's show, busy. I've got The Apprentice, a TV shopping channel experience. Megan's new Netflix show. Working with Waterstones. Mel Robbins' brilliant book, Let Them. And a little bit about my life story. I'm going to do a little taster every week about my crazy life. And my guest is Ros Chandler from Fieldgate Flowers. Now, Netflix have made some cracking decisions of shows they've commissioned lately, Adolescence being one of them. But they have, however, commissioned with Love Megan. So I thought I'd give Megan's show a go and see whether it was deserving of all the vitriol that it's receiving online. It's kind of like she's running some sort of B&B. It's so luxe and so over the top, but she's not even filming it at her house, so that I do not understand. So in the first episode, she had her makeup artist friend Daniel come over, and apparently they've been friends for 15 years, but obviously they're not that close, otherwise you would have been at her wedding. She literally only had her mum there, and that in itself I think should have sparked concern. I genuinely liked in the beginning, and I wanted to believe that there was going to be a happy ever after for her and Harry, but I genuinely don't think now that was part of her MO. I feel like she set out to bag a prince, married him, and realised that once Charles became king, the purse strings were controlled by William, and that was never going to end well. I digress. She really rolled out the red carpet for this friend of hers and made truffle popcorn. What is that even, honestly? Bath salts from scratch. Who's got time? Candles from her beehives, but then quite blatantly decanted some bought peanut pretzels into a posh bag. So again, if you're going to fake it, just don't show what you've done. Do you know what I mean? That just looked so kind of artistically fake. That was very bizarre as well. And peanut butter pretzels sounds disgusting anyway. She's kind of clad head to toe in white linen with a beautiful cashmere sweater draped over her shoulders, lots of gold jewelry, and not an apron in sight. I don't know about you, but in the rare occasions I go in the kitchen, I need to be pretty much donned head to toe in an apron, and my kind of scruffs, because the food is going to get everywhere. But I guess she's probably not really cooking it, is she? But it doesn't look authentic at all. In episode 2, which was even more uncomfortable watching, her friend Mindy Kaling, who's an actor, apparently they've been friends since 2022, came for a visit. And when Mindy calls her Meghan Markle, she actually reprimands and says, "I'm Sussex now, I have kids, and I share my name with the children. It feels so meaningful to me. It's just because it's our family name." It was such an awkward encounter, and it talk about putting your friend back in her box. It was utterly cringe. I also find it very strange that someone who's so keen to be in the public eye and publicity hungry, she never shows her children. And every time you see her children, it's the back of their heads and their hair is a different colour. So I think it's very, very suspicious. And the hypocrisy of kind of wanting the anonymity of, sort of living a life away from prying eyes and the press and everything. And yet they've, being part of the royal family, she clearly didn't want that, and that's when Megxit happened. They've gone to California, and now she's using the Sussex name to gain every ounce of marketing and a PR opportunity as possible. And the worrying thing is that companies like Netflix are actually pandering to her. I couldn't watch another episode of this vain, vacuous woman pretending to be some sort of Earth Mother. This is 2 hours of my life I will not get back again. I'm going to talk The Apprentice. First of all, this is one of my many icks that I get for The Apprentice. People saying myself and Anissa. When did that become commonplace to say that in English? Myself and. I was taught 1,000 years ago, to be fair, when I was at school, just to say Anissa and I. Or even Anissa and me. That doesn't sound great, but Anissa and I. But this myself and Anissa, or Anissa and myself. When did myself become a thing? It's become very much a part of modern language, and I really, really don't approve. Anyhow, I digress. The teams went to to do the Shopping Channel experience, and what was on offer was the ugliest outdoor fountain I have ever seen. LED gloves, these massive LED gloves, which claim to improve wrinkles, retailing at 500 quid, and a kayak and an air fryer stroke grill. Amber Rose and Shizola were incredibly gullible, but Mia, of course, with her catering experience, won the bid for the air fryer, which was the most popular item. Max's team leader, posh boy and ex-tennis pro, bought items which he liked rather than what the customer would like or what they would buy. And his justification for buying the kayak was that everyone lived near a river and a kayak, but, the feedback he got was a kayak is simply too niche. I mean, how many of us live near a river? I mean, I live near the Grand Union Canal, but I wouldn't be able to kayak down it. It was just insane. Anyway, when it came to being on air, watching the girls in their bodycon dresses and 6-inch heels flail around in the kayak was so embarrassing, and they were literally up the creek without a paddle. Amber Rose was selling the steamer on the Shopping Channel, and she was being directed from the gallery to put her face into the steamer, which she refused to do, probably because she was wearing 6 inches of makeup. And comments from the gallery like, "I'd like you to put your face in it and sniff," probably didn't help much. But they kept saying, "Put your face in," because she was talking about the steamer, which is to sort of help, sort of vocal cords, etc. She was just holding it there, and they were saying, "Put it on your face," because what you're meant to do is actually put it on your face like that and breathe in. My son uses one, as a singer, so you actually need to put it over your whole face. So yeah, that was just ridiculous. But the comments like "put your face in it and sniff" didn't help. A picnic blanket was also being sold. I mean, what can you say about a picnic blanket? Apparently not very much, apart from it's portable, and then they talked about the size. It's machine washable, and it's only 30 quid. Let me show you the size again. They were holding up this ridiculous blanket. It's so awkward. The 600-pound LED mitt was being demonstrated by Shizola and Amber Rose, as they had been given no information on it. They were making these wild claims, just saying after 30 minutes you get rid of all wrinkles and it's better than any cream or serum. And then obviously the voices from the gallery saying you can't make these claims, these are unfounded, they are not true. And they had to then retract and say, actually, this isn't true. They just improve wrinkles, but they don't actually get rid of him, and certainly not in 30 minutes. Liam, who had insisted that he present over the gift of the gab, the wonderful Irish Jordan, was absolutely abysmal on screen. He was flailing wildly, couldn't put the Hoover together properly, and saying things like, "So do you want to use the longer shaft?" And it looked like a Hoover for a child. He was utterly deluded as to how good he thought he was. And Lord Sugar said he made it look harder to assemble than the Oppenheimer bomb. He was that embarrassed watching him. Liam's team only won because they had the air fryer and Mia. Liam should have been fired just for his wooden acting. He dodged a bullet, he really did. Dean, who's the air conditioning salesman, is really, really honest about the fact that he's a risk taker and straight talking and no nonsense. But fundamentally, it was down to Max's shocking product selection that he deserved to go. So yeah, another cringe-worthy task. I can't wait for next week. And welcome to the Working with Waterstones segment. Ta-da. This is the book that I was reading last week, and I'm still reading it. It's the Mel Robbins Let Them book, which is amazing. I think with self-help books, I can't whiz through them like fiction. So it's something, because there's quite a lot to take on, to sort of take on board, and that I want to sort of absorb and think about in action, that it's taken me quite a long time to read. It's not because it's not a brilliant read, because it really, really is, but it's taken me longer than normal. But honestly, this book is just incredible. So two simple words will change how you think about your entire life. If you're struggling to achieve your goals or feel a little happier, the problem isn't you. The problem is the power that you give to other people. I could not agree with that statement more, actually. In this book, you'll learn how 2 words, let them, can set you free. Free from the opinions, drama, and judgment of others. Free from the exhausting cycle of trying to manage everything and everyone around you. There is a better way to live. The let them theory is a proven method that teaches you how to protect your time and energy and focus on what matters to you. You've spent too long chasing approval, managing other people's happiness, and letting their opinions hold you back. Learn how to stop giving your power away and creating a life where you come first, your dreams, your goals, and your happiness. Let Them is a simple tool that millions of people around the world can't stop talking about because it works. The fastest way to take control of your life is to stop trying to control other people and focus on what you can control yourself. By letting other people live their lives, you can finally get to live yours. Never was a truer word spoken. much harder to put into practice, I have to say. But it's an amazing book. And as I said before, as a result of me reading this book, I am absolutely obsessed with Mel Robbins' podcast. If I can be just a teeny fraction as brilliant as she is, one day I will be so amazed. But the impact she's had on millions of people's lives is just unbelievable. I love the fact that every podcast is completely different. As I said, she has all these incredible experts on. She talks about money and health and sleep. And it was ironic, I was listening to the sleep one last night when I couldn't sleep, actually. And really, really good advice from world-renowned experts from sort of Harvard and stuff. But her money one is particularly interesting. I mean, I think 10, 12 years ago, her and her husband were £800,000 in debt. I mean, that's inconceivable kind of money, really. And how she's kind of turned her life around and become one of the best podcasters in the world. And this book is on the New York Times bestseller list as well. So this positive mindset and what she's doing has just been extraordinary, and she's changed so many people's lives as well as her own. She's an amazing example, and it's so lovely for me as a sort of a female sort of businesswoman to have someone that I can look up to and just sort of talk about her podcast, because not everybody wants to read a great weighty tome like this, but a podcast is absolutely worth listening to, apart from my own, of course. So I've had a bit of feedback from my listeners, which is wonderful. I welcome all feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. People wanting to know a little bit about me, because I've obviously talked about the fact that I'm from Zimbabwe, but people are sort of saying, well, we want to know a little bit more of your story. So that's prompted me to sort of start writing my book again, because that has been sort of in the making for 5 years, and I've been, 10 years actually now. So that's kind of prompted me to do that. But I just wanted to sort of do a little bit about, my upbringing, which has been quite interesting. So I'm going to do that every week. So an incentive to tune in every week and sort of find out a little bit about me and sort of behind what I do as a day job, as a stylist, as a broadcaster, as a podcaster, and all the many hats that I wear. So I was born in a mining town in what was then Rhodesia, and my dad was a chartered surveyor, my mum was a nurse. Their parents were both immigrants. So my paternal grandfather had come over from Bristol, and he'd gone out to South Africa and become a missionary. And my dad was actually born on a mission station in South Africa. So really, really humble beginnings. And my mum's grandparents were Lithuanian Jews who'd fled to South Africa after the war. And my grandfather anglicized his name from Galuski to Gallen because of the anti-Semitism after the war, and being in business was just absolutely untenable. We can't kind of imagine how difficult that must have been. And my great-grandparents were actually pioneers who went out to South Africa in the gold rush, won and lost their fortune several times over. So I definitely come from pioneering stock. So I think it's really interesting where we come from. And one of these days, I'm going to, when I've got time, I always promise myself I'm going to do these things, I'm going to actually look back. And I did do my family tree, and it does go back quite a long way, but to sort of see, the different where I come from in terms of a nationality. So I think that's really, really interesting. So my parents divorced when I was a baby, and my parents, both of them, remarried very quickly. So my dad was an actor, my stepdad was an actor and a stage manager. So that's hence my love of theatre. I grew up in the theatre, but more of that later. And I must say my mum was a nurse. But my dad actually built our house in the middle of the bush. Now, that is inconceivable to people living in the UK. Land is much cheaper in Africa, and so a lot of people build their own houses. So we actually lived in the bush, and my dad built this beautiful house with a sweeping veranda and thatch, and it was an incredible childhood just watching him sort of put this house together, and it was my happy place. And yeah, those idyllic times that we know when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, you just think this is actually completely carefree, and it was an amazing time. So that's a little bit about my sort of very early years. And Dad was called up to the Rhodesian army. Obviously everyone had to serve on active service, so he had to go away quite a lot, and we were sort of left alone. And that's where my book is based on, as well as what happened after we were left alone in the bush, sort of my mum and 3 small children. So scary times, but as a child you just kind of accept it. So yes, next week, part 2, Snakes in the House. And if you stay tuned, I'd love you to stay tuned. I'm going to be talking to Ros Chandler of Fieldgate Flowers. And I'm a little bit excited. I'm always excited with guests, but this guest is really special to me, actually. Her name is Ros Chandler, and she's a seasoned flower farmer, educator, and mentor with over 15 years' experience in the growing and arranging of British flowers. I've known Ros a long time, and we're going to come to that in a minute. Through Fieldgate Flowers, she helps everyone grow cut flowers, whether for profit or passion. From her 5-acre farm in North Milton Keynes, she also supplies British-grown blooms for weddings, funerals, and wholesale. Additionally, she offers subscription buckets of blooms, which I know these are amazing, delivering fresh seasonal flowers across Milton Keynes from her farm to your door. Welcome, Ros.
Thank you very much for having me.
So happy. So it's a long time since we've seen each other.
Very long time.
I mean, there's been a lot happening for both of us.
Definitely.
Not necessarily all of it brilliant, let's be honest.
Roller coaster.
Roller coaster, yes, definitely. So Ros and I met, God, it must be 20 years ago when I was running my styling business, and you were one of my first customers.
I remember you in my bedroom.
let's wind back. But honestly, I remember when I first met Ros, she'd messaged me and said, I'd like you to come and do my colours and a wardrobe weed. And I went to her lovely house, which was then in Simpsons. You moved a couple of times since then. And I opened the door, and this tiny little lady was standing there with this huge amount of big hair. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's a lot of hair. And we just had the best time. I went through your wardrobe. Oh, sorry, I pressed the button. I went through your wardrobe, and we just had the most amazing time, and sort of, we developed into sort of a good friendship and a business relationship. And and I'm so happy that you are doing well. This is another iteration of your life. I mean, you had many careers, but this is quite the career change. So talk us through the career change, because tell us your original background, because it's tourism, wasn't it?
Yes, it's all happens. I suppose I see my life in 3 or 4 chunks, but it all happens by accident. It was never planned. None of my career changes were ever really planned. And I was, at that point, I mean, the flower farm's been going 15 years. So at that point, I had a digital marketing agency that I was running. And also I then went to be a marketing consultant. So I do sales and marketing director roles, interim roles in different businesses. And my job was to go in, turn them round, make them money, make them more profitable, and walk away. And then one day we did buy this house in the north of Milton Keynes, and it was fairly derelict. And we said, okay, well, it's got some land, what are we going to do? And some animals arrived, as they do, the pigs, the goats, the sheep, a dog.
Only for you, that's not actually what most people do, by the way.
A dog and a cat.
For you, that's normal.
And then I looked around and thought, I really should make use of this land. I didn't know what to do. So I went on a half-day cut flower course. Thought this would be interesting down in Somerset. So I did that, and I came back and I said, and all the time I was there, I thought, well, yeah, I can do this. I don't come from a horticultural background. I didn't know what one flower from another was. I came back and thought, yeah, I'll have a go at this. Perhaps we can make this little side hustle. That's what we'll do. So we built 3 raised beds in a little area, got 1 polytunnel, and just started really small, threw some seeds in, they grew, and I thought, well, maybe I can do this. And that's how it happened. And then it was a side hustle for a number of years. I wasn't really very happy with it being a side hustle.
Of course you
So
weren't.
it was always going to develop into something. So it grew and grew, excuse the pun, into the flower farm it is today. Over the years, I mean, it's had lots and lots of different changes. So now we are growing over the 5 acres. And obviously I have learnt a lot as I've gone along. And now I do know one flower from another. But I certainly didn't when I started. So I have a real passion to help people grow their own flowers, because I think if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Well, that's not strictly true, because you do have the Midas touch. I think everything you touch is really successful. You have this phenomenal mindset. You're just grit and determination to get things done and do it. So you would make. Not everybody would have done it. So you need to give yourself some credit for that. But why flowers? Were you a flower lover beforehand?
No. Not at all.
Okay.
I just saw a business opportunity, I think. Everyone loves flowers, but it wasn't something, and I hadn't ever done any gardening, and I didn't come from a gardening background, and my parents lived in a new town, and they both worked, so there was nothing called gardening at weekends or anything like that. I mean, a bit of weeding, but nothing that I knew anything about. So I think I saw it as a business opportunity, and then I saw lots of beautiful flowers, and then it developed. And also I had the great thing, if I look back on my career, my degree was in environmental chemistry. And I did my thesis on, nitrates in water and how they come from farmland and so on. And that sort of touched on importation of flowers into the UK. because at the moment 90% of the flowers coming into the UK are imported, and that 10% are actually local, and 90% of them are coming from Kenya, Ethiopia and South America. So we do think they come from Holland, but in truth they don't. Holland is a wholesaler for Europe, and therefore they come from all over the world into Europe and into Holland, and then they feed the rest of Europe. So by the time your rose has arrived on Valentine's Day, there is little doubt that it has travelled 4,500 miles, and that it's been heavily, heavily treated where it is with pesticides and partially frozen in order for it to arrive on the shelf in the UK. So I had this environmental definite thing that I wanted to conquer, and I wanted to have flowers locally, and we did. We used to grow flowers locally in Victorian times. We never imported them from halfway across the world, and we kind of lost that, and we lost businesses. And if you look at Lincolnshire now, there are lots of empty greenhouses, and I wanted to see if we could turn the industry round and that people would buy local and would buy British. So there was a sort of environmental part of it that I wanted to do.
That's really interesting that your what you did for your thesis
I know
ended up, who knew it would be so useful, because I guess when you like a lot of people, they do a degree and it ends up not being particularly relevant. So it's obviously was super useful. But I mean, and it's a silly question, has Fieldgate Flowers exceeded expectation?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was going to be a side hustle, and then it turned into a farm, just doing weddings and funerals and subscription buckets across Milton Keynes, which is fabulous. So in itself is a farm, and that was great, and that's all it was really meant to do. And it was a lifestyle business with a little bit more probably. And then just before COVID, I started teaching. So I started teaching online, and what that involved was teaching anyone to grow flowers across the whole of the United Kingdom by online teaching. So I would run an 8-month course called Seed to Vase, and we would take them from the beginning in February right to the end of October, where the flowers would be in a vase, and everything in between, everything from composting to insects to pruning roses to everything, on having a cut flower patch. And I launched that just before COVID, but it was probably, when I look back on that, so we're going into our 5th year of it now. When I look back now, I think, gosh, how did I do that and hit the wave at that time that everybody's gardening because there's nothing else to do? So it was just fortuitous. It was not planned. I'd love to say it was completely planned. It was not. And it was extremely successful because everybody was in their gardens. So they all joined this course, and I was a bit taken back. And so we had about 280 people on this course, taking us from February to October that year. And then we've launched it every year since in February. So we're now, as I say, going in our 5th year. And the idea is to teach everybody to grow cut flowers, not just people who know anything about it. It's from beginners. And what's happened in that course, so there's, I don't know, many hundreds of people have gone through it now, is that some people just do it purely for pleasure, and that's it. And that's great. And some do it as a community project. And then there are a section of people who go on and become flower farmers because they're actually caught by the bug. So I actually wrote a book way back in COVID, it seems like so long ago, called Seed to Vase. And it was about the journeys that all these other people have been through in COVID, why they were growing flowers. And I thought that I was quite humbled by it, because some of them had had bereavement, some of them had gone through a divorce, some of them have actually had COVID, or lost a parent in COVID. There were loads of different reasons why people were growing. But actually what it proved to me is that just getting outside and growing and doing something in nature helped their mental health.
And that's such, I mean, that, as you say, you just struck while the iron was hot.
I did. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm really regretting my sartorial choice today. Pleather under, with lights and PCs and everything is really, I will definitely rethink next time. Anyway, welcome back to Ros Chandler, my lovely guest. We were talking before about the fact that you set up, you've set up the Great British Flower School, but you do, you hit exactly the right time, which was lockdown. You could not have planned it better. And I know you say everything's a happy accident, but I think there must have been a little bit of strategy. I mean, you didn't know obviously about the lockdown was going to happen, but there must have been some strategy involved.
I think fundamentally I wanted to get cut flowers out to more people, and the only way to do that was obviously to take teaching online, and so that was great. And then it kind of developed, so I was teaching consumers how to have their own cutting patch, and then I did some business courses on how to if you're a flower farmer, how to make money, because that was my background on marketing. And then I set up a cut flower membership, and people have a monthly membership to it, which is lovely. And so things developed. So the whole online for me became bigger and bigger. And my audience became bigger and bigger. And then visibility becomes bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden you've got quite this big business that you think, oh, okay, that's how it happened. But yeah, 5 years on it's grown a lot.
But it is amazing, and I love your social media content. It's always so positive, and even though I'm absolutely no gardener at all, there's everything about it is so positive and joyous, and I can see, and I've known you a long time, that you are so good at inspiring people to get people to do things that maybe they think that they're not capable of doing, and the content that you put out, as I say, is so inclusive and it's just fun, and that's what
fun.
It should be. You look like you're having the best time. You're not taking yourself seriously, or whoever your co-presenters are, you're not taking it seriously, and that's what it should be. And I think that's part of the attraction is you're not like, oh my god, this is so serious. Ultimately it's flowers, but it's bringing so much joy, and I think that's why you've been so successful.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on it about why I've got so many followers, particularly on Instagram now. But I think probably a lot of it is I'm just me. I am what I am. You get what it is. It's full of integrity. I don't pretend to be anything I'm not. Obviously we can talk about I've gone through a big journey, and that was quite hard on Instagram because it was like, when do you announce your journey and how do you play that journey out without... I never want it to be a kind of sob story kind of thing. I wanted it to be it was part of my life, and I wanted people to be positive from it, and I wanted people to reach out to me if they needed help. That's what I really wanted. So through that period was quite challenging, but it still is all about being honest and full of integrity. So.
Absolutely. And you've been very, as you say, been very open online about your cancer journey, and you really, really sort of out of everybody I know, that you have had the most incredibly difficult few years, and you've soldiered on, and you've remained super positive. But I think the fact that you've been so authentic, and you talk about how you feel online, and what the operations and the chemo and how grueling it all is, it makes you so much more relatable, because people just want to see real. They're sick to death of kind of fake, phony Instagram influencers, who clearly it's all very sort of filtered and get ready with me kind of thing. It's like, well, I don't actually really care, what your beauty technique is. It's taken you 5 hours to get ready, but you're making it look like it's 5. We all know that, So I think that authenticity and not being duplicitous in any way, shape or form, is so important.
I wanted to, through my cancer journey, just talking about that, and obviously I had chemo and radio and an operation, and it's ongoing, and there's still tablets and all sorts, and bone infusions and all, I had everything thrown at me for sure, because my cancer was very treatable. So the more treatable your cancer is, the more treatment they're going to give you. So I had the whole book, if you like. But all I would say to anyone going through that journey is that it's all doable, with the absolute mental attitude that it is all doable. And it's only a short period of time in your life. It's not forever. It's just a short period. And each treatment is one less, where you can skip back to your car and think, wow, that's another one gone. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's definitely not easy. I'm just saying it's doable.
But again, that positivity, even when you were sort of in your hospital bed and being prepped for surgery, you were there just like, I'm here, it was painful to watch, that to know that you were going through all this, and you've got such a wonderfully loving and supportive family, and I know family is everything to you, and I think fundamentally, when the chips are down, and I've had my own horrendous few years as well, different reasons, but health-wise last year, and emotionally as well, but it's amazing, you do get through, and when you're in the mire of it, you think, oh my god, I'm literally never going to smile again, I'm never going to feel well again, or whatever, and then you do, and you've got to keep going. You've got to be positive, and as I say, if you surround yourself with really good people, and you do all your journaling and you're meditating and all that, and your family is just absolutely everything. Is so important. But I think you've not just because of the florist side of things, but just because, as I say, you've been with your cancer journey has been, you must have reached so many other women out there who are just feeling so lost and alone, and also during COVID, such a difficult time. I mean, can you believe it's 5 years?
No.
I know, 5 years since we'd gone into lockdown, and it feels like it was yesterday, but it feels like it didn't happen at all. It's so weird, isn't it?
Like we've erased it from our memories, and hopefully it will never happen in our lifetime again like that. But I think, did we really do it? And did we really stay indoors? And did we really go to the supermarkets with the arrows on the floor? And did we? I mean, the whole thing is quite mad when you look at it. And maybe, when we look back on it, when we're in our 90s, we'll think that was completely mad. But yeah, it was something we all went through. And the cancer journey is the same. When you're in it, you're in it. You're in the trenches. It's almost like being at war, because you are at war. And you do what you have to do at that time. You don't mentally take anything on. You can only take on, I've got this today, I've got that tomorrow, I'm going to feel like this the next day, and move on. You are fighting in the trenches, and then at the end of it, you go, did I really do that? I mean, I look back now and I'm exactly the same way as COVID, and I think, did I really do that? And that kind of, you move on.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary journey, and with a very positive outcome. Welcome back to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon, where I'm joined by Ros Chandler, who is Flower Farmer Supremo. I don't know anybody else who does what she does. Ros has started the Great British Flower School, which is an amazing idea and exceeded expectation, hasn't it?
Again, I have to say that happened a little bit by accident.
We're just quite jammy, aren't we, really?
No, I think it's quite, honestly, I do. We were running the Seed to Vase course and growing, and we were teaching people at the end of that course how to arrange flowers. And then we realised actually there was a big market of people out there who wanted to arrange flowers, whether that was for pleasure, or whether they were flower farmers who wanted to add it to their revenue, or whether they were actually florists and wanted to learn to be more sustainable. Because traditionally, when you attend a florist school, and unfortunately still now when you go to florist school in the UK at any colleges, you learn in floral foam.
I saw that on your video. My God, I never knew.
Still, like, how we can still be using single-use plastic, and then we wrap everything in cellophane and we use ribbons, and I mean the floristry waste in this country is horrendous. And obviously coming from an environmental point of view, I wanted to see what we could do. So we set up the Great British Flower School, which is a sustainable flower school. So it's all about teaching people sustainable mechanics. So chicken wire, agra wool, pouches, in water. Everything we do is sustainable and reusable and not single-use plastic. Because floral foam does not degrade in the environment ever. And I want to say ever. It's worse than single-use plastic. It's just ever. And actually, even biodegradable floral foam does not degrade in the environment, because actually on the box it says it's biodegradable. And you think, that's okay then. But actually what that means is it's biodegradable under certain landfall conditions at certain times, which would never be met. It's like saying you've got 2 right feet and it'll be fine. It would never happen. So floral foam biodegradable does not biodegrade either. So we set up a flower school. I got together with an amazing florist from Ampthill, and we set up the Great British Flower School, which set up at the end of last year. And it's been phenomenal. So we're teaching people online whether they want to do floristry for pleasure or they actually want to do it for profit, whether they want to do big wedding installations or funerals, or whether they just want to do it for pleasure. So that's the Great British Flower School.
It's such a brilliant idea. And when I watched your vlog about foam, I was absolutely blown away. And a couple of weeks ago, I had my hairdresser, Hannah, on, who her salon is completely, sort of inclusive, it's all about inclusivity, diversity, but most of all, sustainable, everything. And she was sort of saying, that some of the statistics about, that hairdressing salons don't, they don't sort of recycle pretty much anything. And that was quite shocking. And sort of, it's good that people like, you are sort of, putting your head above the parapet and say, actually, this is not acceptable. In this day and age, knowing what we know, why are we still using stuff that is not, is not biodegradable? And as you say, obviously there's a lot of greenwashing that goes on. People say,
Massive.
oh, it's, biodegradable. Well, yeah, but what does that actually mean? And it's the same, I work in the clothing industry. What is sustainable fashion? And I think a lot of companies are still very, very guilty of sort of, using that sort of label, organic, sustainable, like, yes, but actually when you delve deeper and, it's not. And, we need to stop this, but it's great that, people like you and my hairdresser, Hannah, are just, it might feel like a lone voice in a very big corporate world that doesn't actually care, but you've got to start somewhere, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, floral foam is banned in RHS shows now, which that was a good start. Churches are looking to ban it too, so that would be a very big stand-up. But actually, the British government said ban. We pay for single-use plastic if we go and get a carrier bag. Yet we're still using Oasis and Oasis. There is no need for it either. Constance Spray didn't use Oasis. She had a beautiful dish with chicken wire, or she'd use some tape. She didn't use Floral Fame. That came in much, much later. So let's roll it all back and use the mechanics we used to use and have sustainable floristry.
And it's amazing. And so all this that's been going on in the last 15 years, you have had all these health challenges, massive health challenges. You also are crazy ass person who does these sporting challenges, and you cycle, and you know, what motivates you? What gets you up in the morning?
Yeah, that's a really hard one, actually. And quite often I ask other people what motivates them to get up in the morning. There is definitely a drive there to leave some sort of legacy, actually, finally. That if I could have changed the British flower world, that would be amazing. And obviously I've got 2 children, so if I could change their lives and be inspirational to them, that would be great. So sometimes I ask them, you know, what have they learned from me? Because I spent the day with them yesterday, and what did they learn from me? And they would say they learned hard work, actually, how to work hard, and they're inspired that I always am motivated to keep going. Honestly, I mean, my father was an Irish immigrant. He came to the UK when he was 15. He lied his way into a job at Kodak and told them he was 18. He told them he was qualified in chemistry, and he didn't even know what chemistry was. And he's a bit of an Irish leprechaun and could get his way through anything. And I think I was motivated that if he could turn his whole life around, then probably I can. So I was brought up like that, definitely brought up with, if you want to go and do something, just go and do it.
It's really interesting you say that, because earlier I was talking, on each show I'm going to talk a little bit about my lifestyle, where I come from. And again, it's that need to succeed and that drive and that ambition. If you've come from, as an immigrant to this country, the UK has been incredibly good to me. I mean, my life would never look the way that it does now had I stayed in Zimbabwe, So I am very, very grateful. And for all the moaning that we do, this is a very good country to live in. We are very lucky. We have running water. We have a roof over our head. We can access food. All the stuff that we just take for granted in the Western world. So I feel, and I look at Zimbabwe now, and it makes, it breaks my heart. But as again, sort of as an immigrant, as a child of immigrants, that drive and that ambition and that desire to succeed never really leaves. I was saying my great grandparents were pioneers. They went out in the gold rush to South Africa, made and lost and won their fortune, and again that sort of, and then my grandfather was a missionary, went out to South Africa and lived on a mission station. My dad had very humble beginnings, and again, but he worked so hard, built an incredibly successful business, this desire to succeed, had a school named after him, and his legacy, as you say, he's left a phenomenal legacy, and I think I get my working ethic from him. So that's obviously the same that's happened with you and your dad.
Yeah, definitely 100%. If he needed to make money, he would find a way to make it. If it was buying something at an auction and selling it in the local newspaper, as it was then, he would do it. Or he'd knock on doors, cleaning carpets. He'd do anything to make money. He was very clever.
Amazing. And I think, as you say, inspiring our children is the most important thing. I had a lovely Mother's Day card from my boys just saying, we love you so much, Mum, and we're so proud of you. And I just thought, God, I've done good. I feel I'm happy with that, because my boys have only ever seen me hustle and work and constantly trying to sort of better myself. And they're both hustlers. They're both incredibly hardworking, and what a great legacy for our children.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's talk about your hugely successful podcast, of which I'm incredibly jealous, but also delighted, that it's been so successful. Tell us why you decided to do a podcast, and what's the secret of your success, because I'm going to pinch some ideas.
I think, why did I, again, can I say by accident? No, I won't do that one. I started
because I really want to reach across the desk and punch you, because you're just so damn lucky.
The podcast I started because there wasn't much in my marketplace. Certainly not in the UK.
It's quite niche, isn't it?
Really niche. If you're talking about cut flowers, that's quite niche, isn't it? Not just flowers, cut flowers. So it's called the Cut Flower Podcast. So it was names on the tin, really. There's some in the US, but not much in the UK. In fact, one other in the UK, which has since stopped. So it's really niche. And I wanted to reach more people, so more visibility, obviously. So, it's running a business and reaching more people, not just in the UK, but globally. And that seemed to be the right platform to go, so I could reach everybody. And it has an audience across the globe. It's in its 3rd year, so I've 120, 130 episodes or something like that. It goes out every Friday. What's made it successful? I mean, it is successful, and I'm really proud to have the sponsors that I've got sponsoring it. So it makes it cost neutral, which is great, and increases my visibility. But what makes it successful? I mean, I do plan quite a lot of guest speakers. But interesting, then I do some solus episodes where I'm just talking about something in particular, and they're equally as successful as the guest speakers. So
Interesting.
I thought that was interesting. So we mix it up between guest speakers and me doing some just individual ones, but guest speakers from all over the world. And I always aim really high with my guest speakers.
Love
I go
it.
as high as I possibly can. And obviously, the more listeners you've got and the more exposure you're going to give to someone, the better off the guest speaker will more likely come on. I'll always aim for someone who's just written a book or who's quite popular or well known, because they want to promote their book. It's quite similar to the Graham Norton show, isn't it? He always gets somebody on and they're all ready with their book. Here we go. And it's exactly the same with a podcast. So it's about saying, okay, and we provide them with a presentation which says, well, these are the stats, these are the amount of people it reaches, these are the countries it reaches, and this is what we need you to do in return for being on our podcast. So we do ask for collaboration. So we'll put a reel on our Instagram, but in return we'd ask them to accept our collaboration, so it goes on their Instagram. So it's a shared. It isn't all just for them to come on the podcast and get lots of exposure and for us not to get any exposure. It has to be a 50-50 collaboration, and that's always worked. So yeah, good speakers, consistency every Friday, which I have to say is not always easy. Not always easy at all. And always looking ahead and trying to get some speakers lined up for and also quite topical. So, let's say we're going into RHS Chelsea. So let's get somebody talking about how they put an exhibition together for RHS Chelsea. Or, if we're topical about, if we're in dahlia season, let's get somebody on to talk about how they have their dahlias. So, yeah, it's lots and lots of planning. I mean, I have a huge things to do list, and on it comes podcast, and every time it's like speakers. And I'll come across somebody on Instagram, and then I will message them. And I try and make it global. So I try and get people from the US, some from Europe, and also I look for people that are smaller, much smaller, so I can help them in some way, because I was there too. And they haven't got, they might have a small Instagram following, but they're really interesting. I did one recently with a girl who was setting up a flower farm in Cheshire called Life on the Lot. And she was really interesting and very, very motivating and very enthusiastic, but just starting out and wanted to get a message out there. And she was great. So it's a real mix, I think.
And it's really inspirational to hear you say that, actually. And I'm sort of newish at the podcast game. I think this is my 16th or 17th show. So, and I'm absolutely loving it. But it's a huge amount of work. People don't see how much work goes into it. I mean, I'm probably sort of probably taking between 4 and 6 hours a week to do this. So it's getting the guests and luckily, like you, guests are approaching me now, which is a lovely position to be in. And guests breed guests as well. So, I'll have an amazing guest and they'll say, oh, I know so-and-so. So that's wonderful. But, there is a lot of work. This just doesn't happen. You don't just turn up and talk. And I do watch some celebrities who just clearly aren't prepping, and they just turn up on the basis that they are a celebrity. And there's just a lot of waffle, and that makes me quite cross, because I think actually, there is a structure to this. There's a lot of thought gone into this, and when you just sit up there and sort of talk and it's a vanity project, that's kind of annoying.
I plan all mine, and I plan all do the research on the guest speaker, and then I send them outline draft notes of the kind of questions, when there's some gap or there's something, some people aren't very good being on a podcast, so I then stick to the script, how did you get, and then I throw in some odd questions and so on, but they can be a little bit more prepared. So that takes time. So there's the research and the prepping of the notes, and then there's the recording, and then don't talk about the editing. And then once you've edited, then you're uploading it and distributing it, and then you're promoting it. So I promote it through my whole email list, on all my free Facebook groups. I promote it obviously on the podcast channel, and we promote it to about 300,000 people. So we're out there going, right, this week's podcast is this, and this is what we're talking about. So there's a lot,
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I don't have to do the editing. Chris, my lovely producer, does all the sort of the behind the scenes technical stuff. I mean, I put it out on my socials, but it's a lot of work. I mean, it's so lovely. And even if you just get one person who responds and said, what you've said has made such a difference, it's so worth doing, because sometimes you do think, God, am I just talking to myself? But and I was feeling a bit like that the other week, sort of imposter syndrome, and Chris gave me my figures and Spotify, sort of 1,000 listens, and I think for a new podcast, I'm
a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Roz, and that means a lot. And it's good to know that you're doing it, and I say if just one person, what you're saying resonates with one person, then it's so worth doing. So you are such an inspiration, though, from a business perspective, as a working mother as well. I mean, your children must be so proud of you, though, your girls.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think they would say that. They're both doing really well now, which is great for me. They're both doing their own things in completely different worlds. They are so different, as most people say their children are so different. But God, if you've got one lawyer and one psychotherapist working with anorexic adolescents, who couldn't be more different. But it's great. And the fact they go on do ballet themselves in London together and stuff and see themselves without their parents is quite lovely too. So yeah, I'm proud of that.
It is wonderful. And my boys, like your girls, are diametrically opposite. They don't really even look like look like brothers. And he said brother and sister there, but brothers. My eldest is he's a proper grafter. He's a hustler. He runs a photography and videography business, doing really, really well. But during the day he's an estate agent. He does sort of mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu in the evening. So he works 24/7, and he's got a sort of a long distance girlfriend. And then my youngest is in a boy band now, so he's living his best life and doing schools tour over the country, and there's lots of exciting things to talk about that coming up again. But as a performer, he had 7 months of not working, and we all know what the performing industry is like. It's really difficult. So you want your kids to be happy and to succeed, and hopefully, as I say, we've been a great example to our children, though.
It's what you want to be.
Absolutely. But it's been so lovely to talk to you. Tell us how we can find you on the socials.
So you can find me, start off with Instagram or Facebook at Fieldgate Flowers. That's where I put all my news out. If you start there, then you'll be able to find me in lots of other areas. If you listen to the podcast, the Cut Flower podcast, that would be fabulous. I'd love some feedback, because as you say with podcasts, you put it out and you've no idea what's coming back, so that would be lovely. But yeah, at Fieldgate Flowers on Instagram is probably the best place to start.
Thank you, Roz. It's been so lovely to see you again after all these years. And I'm so delighted in your success. I really, really am. So it's so if you want to contact me, I'm _Nancy_MK. God, I get this wrong every week. _NancyMK_ on Instagram. If you'd like to be a guest, if you know someone who'd like to be a guest as well. This is your show as much as it's mine. Love to have it's primarily as women, but interesting people on my show talking about what celebrating, if it's crazy, different, I want to hear about it. So thank you so much for joining us on today's show. My name is Nancy Stevens, and this is The Lifestyle Show.